Hello and welcome back to the Shark Source podcast. This is going to be a special episode. It's our trade deadline special. The trade deadline was just 2 days ago on Monday. I'm going to hopefully have this up on Wednesday night. That is what we are recording. So, if not, it'll be up the next day. So, the trades are still fresh. We are in our last podcast. The most recent trade we had done was the Jason Zucker trade, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're going to start. We're just going to go through every major trade and discuss it. Then we'll also do what we always do, take a look at the standings. Of course, we have to talk briefly about the emergency goalie for Carolina, though we won't talk too long about it because I feel like everyone's already heard about it. And then finally, we can talk a little. I guess also two things actually. So first, we'll do some injuries around the leagues. There have been a lot affecting both the Sharks, Oilers, and other teams. And then finally, the Winter Classic announced it's going to be the Blues. So we'll very briefly touch on that. All right.
And the winners and losers of the trade deadline.
Yeah. That we'll do that after we do all the trades. So first trade that we're talking about, David Quenneville and a second-round pick to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Andy Green. To the Islanders get Green. So Islanders getting another defenseman. They give up a pick and a prospect. What are your thoughts on the deal?
Didn't expect it.
Me neither.
It's not like the Islanders really needed their defenseman because that's what Trotz's system is. Before they got Pajot, they really needed forwards. So it caught me off guard, but it's not a huge trade. But it helps the Islanders, and the Devils are stacking up on those prospects and picks. So that's a lot to give up for a rental for a third-pairing defenseman. So I think New Jersey made out pretty well here.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Green isn't exactly what I would have expected the Islanders to go for. He's 37. I think like you said, I believe that's an expiring contract, $5 million this year. So he's near the end of his career, but they get. So for me, it's perplexing because I just don't see why they needed to give up so much for him. I mean, he has only 13 points this season. Though with the Islanders so far, he already has 2 points, which is something, I guess. But I don't know. And again, they didn't bring him in to get points. They brought him in to play defense. But like you said, I don't think that's where they needed it. So again, I don't have a problem that they go and get him. I have a problem that they gave up a second and David Quenneville for him. Now I don't think David Quenneville is going to make the NHL. Probably not. I mean, this season he split time between the ECHL and AHL. So I don't know. He's 21, so there's still time for him. But again, I think the main thing is the fact that they gave up a second for Green is just an overpay. All right. So if you have any more thoughts on that, or can we move on?
We should move on. We have a lot to go over.
Yeah, we do. So unless it's like a major trade, we'll just give our basic thoughts and move on. And I just wanted to add one more thing, as I'm sure you could tell. David Quenneville is the son of David Quenneville, or Joel. No, David Quenneville is the son of Joel Quenneville, and he also has a brother who's in the NHL as well, or AHL, one of the two. Anyway, next trade we have the Devils again. And I guess we can quickly say who won each trade in our opinion. I think the Devils won this one. What about you?
All right. Yeah, I think they won both deals on the Green trade and this Coleman trade.
Yep. Well, here is the Coleman trade. Lightning acquire Coleman from the Devils, and the Devils acquire Nolan Foote, conditional first-round pick. The condition is if the Canucks don't make the playoffs, it will become a first-round pick next year. But they probably will, so it will probably be a first-round pick. So what are your thoughts on that trade?
Coleman's a guy that, is having a great year. I think he has 20 goals. And the Lightning's adding another piece to a stacked roster now. he has term left, so it makes sense why to give him first, but I don't see any reason why you're giving up a prospect in Nolan Foote who is actually pretty good. And once again, just the Devils are stacking up on these picks and prospects. Um, I don't know how Coleman is gonna do in Tampa. He's probably gonna play in the bottom six there, whereas in New Jersey he's probably playing in the top six. So, cheap for Tampa because he only makes 1.9 for the next couple years, and for a cap strap team like Tampa, that's huge. So, it was a lot to give up, but if Tampa wins the cup, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah.
Here's what I'll say, and I've said that about trades they've made. But then again, with that attitude, I mean, usually you don't win the cup, no matter how good you are. Most teams don't win the cup, and so that attitude is exactly how you get to where the Sharks got. They made a lot of trades and contracts, and it's like, well, that's a bad contract. Well, that's a bad trade. But as long as they win the cup, it doesn't matter. And sometimes you never win the cup, and as Sharks fans will tell you, then it's pretty bad. So, in my opinion, the Devils won this trade because Coleman, he's got 31 points this season. 21 of them are goals, which is probably why they paid a little extra than if it was just 31 points. That said, to give up him and Nolan Foote, I just don't think it was worth it for Coleman, and I think that the Devils won another trade. So that's, if you're a Devils fan so far through the trades we've gone through, we'll get to the Seavers Votman later, but that is a good trade.
It just makes me mad how I just wanted to see the Fifth brothers play together in the NHL.
Yeah.
Because Cal Foote is a stud on the back end, but
yeah.
No one's gonna be really good for the Devils for sure.
Yep. All right. Next trade, we got, this is a pretty big one. Tyler Toffoli. I mean, we've talked about him as a trade bait on this podcast for over a year. I remember we're talking about him this time last year as potential trade bait, I believe, or if not this time last year, this time in the off season last year. So we've been talking about him for a while, and he finally gets traded. Vancouver gives up. They give up Tim Schaller, Tyler Madden, a second round pick, conditional fourth that the Kings will get if he resigns. So that's not really worth mentioning because it's only a fourth and it's conditional. But for Tyler Toffoli, I believe this is his last. Yes, this is his last year on that deal, making $4.6 million. He's going to get a raise. This year he has 34 points. 39 points because he's got 5 with Vancouver already in 61 games. What are your thoughts on the deal?
Well, I was pissed that Vancouver got him because they were in our division. So, because you know how much I wanted Emerson to get him. But, there is a risk here if Toffoli doesn't resign and you're giving up a second-round pick in a very good draft class, by the way, and a good prospect in Tyler Madden. Tim Schaller is just there for the roster spot, but, Canuck fans and a lot of Canucks media has been hyping this kid up before he got traded, I think he was a third-round pick in 2018. I'm not too sure, but
that's correct.
From what I heard, he's been lining up college. He's going to be a great I think he's projected to be a second-line center, so this is depending on if Tyler Toffoli resigns. And I think the Canucks have $18 million in cap space now. It could go up, but not by much. And you have PRFA to sign Gaudette, Bertanis, who's having a great year, and Troy Stetcher. So if Tyler Toffoli wants too much money, and he could command a lot knowing that this could be his final big payday, the Canucks are kind of giving up a lot for a rental, and I don't think this is the year to go all in for it. Quinn Hughes is still very young, Pedersen's still young, and they still have good prospects developing, like Ulevi, Podkolzin, and Hoglander. So I get that they want to push early, maybe try to get into the late second round, early third round, but I think that's a lot to give up for a guy to play. And yes, he is off to a great start, but I just don't know if he's gonna resign there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a big believer in not giving up, not getting a rental unless you think you have a shot at the cup. And I'm sure the GM and the coaches and everyone in Vancouver thinks, in that organization, thinks they have a shot at the cup. I've been skeptical about them all year, and they have proven me wrong. That said, I don't think they have any shot at the cup. Uh, you know, and I don't think it was worth it giving it up for Toffoli. If they re-sign him, okay, I can, then I can see it. But why not just go and try and sign him in the off season? And they must think they're gonna make a deep playoff run or win the cup, and I just don't see it. And you talk about Tyler Madden in college hockey. Currently, he's tied for fourth in all of college hockey with 37 points in 27 games. And he's tied for, I believe, I believe he's set. I don't know. He's close to the top in goals as well. It's organized by points right now. So if I, okay, yeah, no. So he is tied for uh, fifth, I believe, in fifth or sixth. Sorry, I have to get this right now. Sixth for in goals. So he's having a pretty good year in college at Northeastern, and if you're the Kings, you have to be happy about getting those prospects coming up. They've got an exciting future too. They're going to pick high again this year. They have a chance at winning the draft lottery. So personally, I think the Kings won this trade. I do think picking up Toffoli is not a bad idea for the Canucks. I think the Kings won the trade.
I agree.
All right, we're gonna skip over Joel Keane for Julien Gauthier. I don't know anything about either of them. We would ignore the DeMello trade, but because he's a former Shark, we'll very briefly go over it. Dylan DeMello for a third to Ottawa. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Just a minor depth move. I'm not surprised when they went out and got a defenseman. I think Morrissey was injured a couple days ago. Of course, Bufflin hasn't played for them all year, and that huge cap hit is still on their is still affecting them. So, a good shutdown top four defenseman. He's not a big point producer, but he's a good solid defenseman. Surprised it only took a third to get him. But good depth move by Winnipeg, and Ottawa gets a pick, so it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to look at it. I would look at it as a win for the Senators. The reason is he's actually a pending UFA. Now I could totally see the Jets re-signing him because he's making $900K right now, so it's not like he'll be a super hot commodity. But the fact that you give up a third for, you called him a top four defenseman. I would say he's more of a bottom two, top six defenseman, fifth or sixth defenseman on the team. And I think that just based on the price that other players went for, and we'll go over that later, I think the Sens won. All right, next, we'll just move on because we don't want to spend too much time on that. Here's a big one for listeners of this podcast who are Sharks fans. Sharks trade Brendan Dillon to the Caps for a second, a conditional third. If they win the third, or if they win the cup, then the third instead becomes a second round, becomes Arizona's third round pick. So really not big of a deal. It's a third either way. I personally, I'm a Sharks fan, so I'm a little biased because I know I've watched Dylan play, but I think the Capitals absolutely fleeced the Sharks here. Getting a second and third on its own doesn't seem too bad, but considering how many teams wanted defensemen, I think the Sharks could have gotten a lot more.
Dylan, the thing with Dylan is there's so much trade talk, like you said, surrounding him. I think the big thing about Dylan is how much is his cap hit right now?
His cap hit right now is 3.27, which is insanely low.
I think I'm just going off pure speculation here. Maybe that was the thing that drove teams off a bit, but Dylan, kind of like DeMello, he's a good, solid defenseman, and for I think it's like the fourth straight year where Washington where Washington has added these types of players to bolster their decor, But it's not a bad trade for short sider, You're selling off an asset, and you're still getting back a second and a third round pick either way. Obviously you probably would have wanted more, especially for a guy like Dylan, but it's not a bad trade either way, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I mean, I guess it's not too bad considering the fact that he's a pending UFA. It's just, and I'm definitely happy we traded him. I guess maybe we could have gotten 2 seconds, or a second, a third, and a fourth, or something like that. But I guess a second and a third isn't terrible. Um, all right. But personally, I think Washington wins this trade. All right. Next trade, we're gonna do Marco Scandella to the Blues. The Habs get a second and fourth. We'll go over this pretty quickly, but what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm pretty sure Montreal traded a fourth for Scandella
Yes.
when he was in Buffalo. So excellent asset managed by Montreal here. You traded him for a fourth. Now you flip him for a second and another fourth round pick. That's great for Montreal. And St. Louis, obviously, if sadly Jay Bouwmeester didn't get a cardiac arrest, and I hope he's feeling better because you never want to see a player go through that. This trade would have been made. So, Scandella, defensive. Montreal loads up on picks. Good trade for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Montreal, you have to be happy about this because, like you said, they trade him for a fourth, and now they get a fourth and a second. Actually, the fourth is they only get the fourth if they re-sign him, or if he wins, or if St. Louis wins 2 playoff rounds and he plays at least half the game. I think that one is pretty likely, but we'll see. Regardless, he's put up. He's played with. This is his third team this season, but like you said, the Blues needed another defenseman with Bouwmeester, so I think they both addressed a need. Marshall's sort of rebuilding, so of course it seems like they are anyway. So I like the trade for both teams. All right, we're not gonna do the Dennis Mulligan trade. Next we're going to Kings trade. Or Kings get 2 second-round picks for Alec Martinez.
Well, I know Martinez has term, but honestly, he's a bottom pair defenseman. I wouldn't really classify him as a really good top four guy. He's great defensively. He doesn't really put up that good. Doesn't really put up good numbers offensively.
Only 12 points.
Yeah. I think Vegas improved their decor. They really needed another defenseman. But I don't really like this trade from Vegas. 2 seconds. Like I said, he has another year left on his contract this season, but I just feel like that's a bit of an overpay. And of course, LA, loading up on more picks. So I think the Kings want to steal.
Yeah, here's how I view. The Vegas is losing draft picks. Next year, after that expansion draft, they were set. They had a lot of draft picks. In this 2020 draft, currently they only have 5 picks, and 1 first round, 2 third rounds, and the other 2 are 6 and 7. And next year they also they have 7, but they're missing some picks. So I don't know. I think that. Again, the price, I think his cap hit is one reason the Kings got more, because having him at $4 million is pretty nice for the Vegas, and it's only for 2 more years, so it's not like it's going to ruin theirs. It's not like he can regress too much within that time. 2 more years, including this current year. But like you said, I think if Dylan got a second and a third, I think Martinez should not have gotten 2 seconds. So if I'm the Kings, I like this deal. And I guess if you're the Golden Knights, even though it's a tiny bit of an overpay, they needed defensemen. They got one, so not terrible. All right, we're gonna next go to Ducks trade Andre Kasha to the Bruins for David Backes, Axel Anderson, and a first-round pick. What are your thoughts on this one?
I hate this trade for the Ducks. If they're obviously rebuilding, and they're near the bottom of the NHL. I don't get why you're going to trade one of your younger forwards for the contract of David Backes. I know the Bruins retained salary, but that first round pick is going to be like what pick from the range of 27 to 31. And actually, Anderson, he's a good young defenseman, but he's not anything special. And like I said, Andre Koshka is a good young forward. Yes, he's been dealing with injuries, but he had a breakthrough season a couple seasons ago, and he's been almost a point per game. Every season where he's not been injured. So I hate this trade for Anaheim. I don't get it, and obviously the Bruins want to get rid of David Backes, and they did it in an easy way. So I think this is a massive W for the Bruins.
Yeah, the injury concerns are real, though. He's never played a full NHL season. The most games he's ever played was 66 games in 17-18. Last year, he only played 30. So I think they're right to be concerned about his injuries history. And this year, he hasn't played all their games, I believe. But he hasn't. I think he was injured when he was traded, but not seriously. So I don't know. But again, he's only 23 years old, and he's a pending restricted free agent. So I agree with you. I don't really understand why they would trade him. And I think importantly, if they're taking that David Backes contract from the Bruins, they probably could have gotten more than just a first and a below average prospect. I think they could have gotten more, especially because they're taking on David Backes' cap hit.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to move up to a trade involving the Oilers. We are now talking on trade deadline day. This is the Oilers get Mike Green for a Kyle Brodziak, but he's not going to play. This is just his contract. And a conditional fourth. It becomes a third if they advance to the conference final. So basically, Mike Green for a fourth. What are your thoughts?
Just one thing. I think you skipped the Kovalchuk trade.
Oh, did I? Hold on. I'm just going in the order it was listed.
Oh.
So hold on. Let me find that because we do want to talk about that. Let's just talk about this one for now. I'll try and find that one.
When the deal was announced, I honestly was a bit confused. I didn't really see it coming. Mike Green, obviously going to help our defense core a lot, and he's a right-hand shot is what we need. But I don't know. It's not like we needed another defenseman. We didn't give him a lot to get him. Detroit's retained half his cap. Puzzling move, but you know what? You need veterans going into the playoffs. You need extra depth defensemen in these forwards. So I guess in the long run, it's gonna make sense. Right now, I'm still kind of scratching my head, but saw Green play the other night. He was actually he looked decent. So obviously Brodziak starts to play again. The fourth turns into a third. Pretty sure the fourth turns into a third in 2021 if the Oilers make the conference finals and Green plays in half his games, which I don't see happening because I don't trust my team yet. But solid trade for both teams, and yeah.
Yeah, here's what I think about that. First of all, third and a fourth, pretty much after the second round, it's basically just getting lucky in the draft. So I don't think it's a big deal. And again, if Edmonton does make it to the conference final, I'm sure they'd be happy to give up the third because they made it to the conference final. But look, we're just gonna go off of it as a fourth because that's what it is right now. And I think, like you said, Green is not special. He used to be a really, I believe he's made the NHL All-Star game, I think, a few times. I think he even made it later in his career with Detroit. But I remember, back when he was with Washington, he was a threat from the blue line, and he can still put up points. Now, again, he's regressing. He's getting older. But at that price, I think it's a no-brainer for the Oilers. I mean, to give up only a fourth for him, I just don't see any downside. So I think that's a big win for the Oilers. And for the Red Wings, the fact that they retained salary and then took on the Brodziak contract, I don't really. I mean, I know they have to rebuild and they have to get any value for their assets, but I just don't think they got. I just think they basically got nothing. So I think the Oilers win this.
I agree.
All right, yes, so we'll go to that Kovalchuk trade because I just didn't see it. So Habs get a third, Caps get Kovalchuk. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, before Kovalchuk was traded, Friedman and basically the entire Sportsnet panel in Canada was saying that Montreal was really looking for a second round pick for Kovalchuk. And, Kovalchuk has been doing great in Montreal, or he was doing great in Montreal. And, just another thing, great asset management by Montreal once more. They picked this guy up for $700K, and they flipped him for a third. And, Washington obviously trying to probably go all in again. And Kovalchuk's going to be a great ad. And Montreal's retaining 50% of his cap, which makes no sense to me because now technically Washington has him for $350K. So that's pretty cheap for Washington. So don't see why Montreal would take salary. And so I say it's a tie, but I'm just confused on that one part.
Yeah, I mean, here's how I view it. If you're the Habs, you get a third for something you didn't even have. So I say they have to be happy about how it worked out. And if you're the Caps, Kovalchuk. There was a picture of him with Ovechkin right after he got in Washington. So he's probably happy to be playing with his national team teammate. And look, he put up some points in Montreal, and he's a nice depth guy that the Caps can use. So I don't see a problem with it from either of them. If you have to say winner, I don't really think there's a loser, but
Yeah.
I guess the winner I would say is Montreal just because they got something for nothing. So
Yeah.
All right. Next we got this is wait. Before that, I was gonna do the Pajot, but right before that, Sens get a fourth for Nemestikov, and the Avs get Nemestikov. I think the Avs have got an absolute steal. I know he's pending UFA at 4 million, right? Or
Yeah, $4 million. I'm pretty sure.
No, actually, I don't think so. Hold on. I think I was looking at something. I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble reading loading the page, but I think okay. Regardless, we'll get to salary later. I think this is an absolute steal for the Avalanche. He has 25 points, 13 of them goals in 54 games with the Sens. But again, that's with the Senators. I think playing with a better team, he could put up even more points. When he was playing with Stamkos and the Lightning, he had 44 points in 62 games before getting traded to the Rangers, and then his stats fell off. So I think he has got potential. I know they like keeping that one, McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog line sometimes, but I think they could. I think if they had to, he could play with those guys and maybe be a producer. All right, hold on, one second, Shaedon. All right, sorry, we're back. We were having more mic issues that we had last episode, but I think they're fixed. So anyway, Shaedon, your thoughts on the Nemestikov deal?
Well, I'm pretty sure that Rantane's out until the end of March for collarbone injury. So I think that's the only reason why Colorado makes the deal. Like giving a 4th-round pick for a young guy like Nemestikov that's proven to play with great players before, like you said, it's an absolute steal for Colorado. I thought they would have done more during the day, but regardless, they added another forward to a deep core. So good move by Colorado, and Ottawa once again just loading up on picks. So
yeah, Colorado. Yeah. That's a team I would think they could have bought more because that's a team that I do think has a shot at the cup. So I'm a little surprised they stood pat so much, but they already do have a good team. All right, now we'll go to another Ottawa trade. They trade Jean-Gabriel Pageau to the New York Islanders for a conditional first, a second, and a conditional third. The condition on the first is if it's top 3, it becomes a first next year. Would have been great if the Sharks had that condition on their pick to Ottawa. And then the third round pick only goes to Ottawa if the Islanders win the cup. So I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, they did it first, second, third." Well, it's just a first and a second. It's very unlikely that I think the Islanders win the cup and it becomes a third. And again, like any condition like that, I'm sure the Islanders would be very happy if it does become third. If they do have to give that up, because that means they won the cup. So, what are your thoughts on this Pajot trade?
I honestly I can't really choose a winner because Pajot just is great. They needed another offensive centerman to go behind Barzell, and they got a slam dunk at Pajot. He was one of the best names on the board. Of course, Chris Kreider resigned, so he wasn't going anywhere. But slam dunk by the Islanders. There's a lot of teams connected to Pajot, and I don't think the Islanders are one of them. So sneaky move by them. And the Sens have 3 first-round picks in this draft, and that's just crazy. Adding on, you get a second-round pick. Great job by the Senators here too. So honestly, it's a win-win. The Islanders locked up Pajot too, so he's gonna be there for a while. So it's worth giving up the second and the first. And Ottawa, they're Pierre Doran's just been doing a great job of rebuilding that team. So I can't choose a winner here. I think both teams made out very well.
I'm gonna have to disagree a little bit here. Now, if you're the Islanders, I think they actually overpaid for Pajot. Now, Pajot, no denying he's a good player, but I would almost say he's a little overrated just because everyone knew he could get traded. This season, he has 40 points in 60 games. Now, that's very good. 40 points, 60 games, 24 of them goals. But this is like hasn't had this good of a year in a. I think that this is actually, I would say, his best year ever. The reason is because his career high in points is 43, and that was in 2016 in 82 games. So he's had, I believe he was injured last year. He only played 39 games and had 12 goals. So, again, this is a good player. A first and a second is a lot, but I would say that would be an overpay if he was a rental. But the fact that they did get him locked up, I do think that makes it more. I think that makes it better if you're an Islanders fan because, and it's only at $5 million per year. I think that's pretty good. He's 27 years old, so I don't think he's too old to sign to that big of a contract. It goes until it's a 6-year deal. So, I think the Senators, if you just go on assets alone, I think the Senators win just because to get a first and a second for him is pretty good. But I think when you look at the Islanders re-signing him, I don't know if they lost necessarily.
Right.
All right. Next big trade of the day, Vincent Trocheck is traded to the Hurricanes, and the Panthers receive 4 players, Eric Holla, Lucas Wallmark, Chase Prisky, and Eetu Luostarinen. I'm not sure. I'm sure I did not pronounce that correctly. But what are your thoughts on these players?
Slam dunk. Honestly, this is one of the many trades today or on deadline day that no one expected to happen.
Yeah.
Carolina gets an incredible second line center. Now, Trocheck's been having a down year, but just a couple of years ago, he had a 75-point season. And Eric Howell, yes, he's a good player, 20-goal scorer, but he's mainly a third-line center that can get you 40 points with very good power production and PK. Lucas Wallmark, bottom 6 guy, nothing special. Luostarinen or whoever that is, haven't really heard of him, so I'm guessing he's just there for an AHL piece. And Prisky, I've read up somewhere where that he's supposed to be good. He should have been in the NHL, and Carolina has 12 NHL defensemen, so probably no room for him. So I'm guessing Florida's going to play Prisky, but I don't know. I think Carolina wins this deal just because how good Trocheck is, and if he can get back to the 70-point level, Florida's gonna regret it. And the thing is, Trocheck's not even a UFA this year. He's a UFA next season. And how was a UFA this season? Lose to Rain, I believe, is an RFA. So, I don't get it by Florida. I think Carolina did a slam dunk here.
You know what? I gotta correct you there. Trocheck's actually a UFA 2 years after this season ends. So, and only at 4.75 million. I mean, that's just an unbelievable contract for someone who, I mean, I think he's pretty comparable to Pajot. Not quite as good goal scoring wise, but this year it's a down year for him. Actually, well, at his peak he was a lot better than Pajot. This year he's got 36 points. When he had 75 points, that's better than Pajot's ever done. But I don't know. I think for the Panthers, it would seem like inexplicable. Why would you make this trade? Well, if you've been reading on Twitter, it seems that Panthers ownership might be to blame for this one. I've read that the Panthers want to cut $10 million in salary next year, and what could you think is what can you think of an asset on the Panthers cap space that's costing them $10 million per year that's completely worthless? Oh yeah, Sergei Bobrovsky. So as it turns out, that contract was a complete disaster unless Bobrovsky can turn it around. And hopefully this contract and the Price contract, which is also looking pretty bad right now, will teach GMs something about giving old goalies big contracts. So we will see, especially when they only, so I don't know. Maybe, again, if Bobrovsky returns to what he once was, I mean, then it's worth it. But right now he's he's playing terrible. He's got 900 save percentage, and at that salary, it's unacceptable. So, and they have now the owner wants to cut salary, which is again ridiculous in a salary cap league. You see this in baseball a lot. Owners want to cut salary, but when a salary cap league, you should be spending at the cap pretty much every year you're trying to contend. So it sucks for Panthers fans. And like you said, Hall is a UFA. These other guys, AHL guys, maybe will make the NHL, maybe won't. But again, Walmart is an NHL guy, but not that good. So I think the Hurricanes easily win this trade.
Yeah.
All right. Next trade we're going to go over is Patrick Marleau. Sharks trade Patrick Marleau to the Penguins for a third, becomes a second if the Penguins win the Cup. What are your thoughts on this one?
This move had to be done. Marleau deserves a cup. He's been here for over 20 years. And this is the best chance he's gonna get. Probably. He's gonna go to a very good Pittsburgh team. And Marleau slowed down a bit. I believe during the season he had a great start.
Yeah.
But getting through on pick, nothing special. But obviously the Sharks are trying to give Marleau the cup, and I don't know. It's something. Even though I'm not a Sharks fan, I'm kind of mad that they didn't do the same thing to Joe Thornton.
Yeah.
The guy deserves a cup as much as Marleau.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Sharks owe it to Thornton more because Thornton stayed when Marleau went to the Leafs. So I really think that it doesn't make sense why the Sharks didn't trade him. I mean, Thornton's getting paid $2 million. That's more than Marleau. Marleau's getting league minimum at $700,000. But I honestly think it's ridiculous that the Sharks didn't trade Thornton. I mean, you could have given him up for a seventh for all I care. It's not like the Sharks are going to make the playoffs. We might as well trade him. So I don't get it. But at least Thornton, I feel like it's possible he could play next year. Sign a league minimum contract with a good team or sign league minimum contract with a bad team and then get traded at the deadline. So maybe Thornton could play one more year. But for Marleau, I do feel like this is his last season, especially because he had trouble getting a contract at the beginning of the season. So I feel like this is his last chance to win a cup, and he's on a pretty good team. That said, only 20 points, 10 of them goals, but again, slowed down recently. I think the Sharks win this trade because going into the year, they didn't even have Marleau. Now they got a pick. So I think Sharks win the trade.
I would have loved to see the Sharks trade Thornton and Marleau to Dallas just so they could have Joe Pavelski.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. But yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been nice to see. But, like you said, I hope Thornton Thornton just signs with like a team like Tampa or Washington or go back to Boston for his last season just so he wins a cup. It sucks, and I think it was Kevin Kurtz that said that Thornton's pissed off. So, um, you know, I just really hope Thornton gets one soon.
Yep. All right. I agree with that, and I hope he plays next season. I think we should have traded Thornton. All right, we're going to move to the next trade. This one surprised a lot of people. Buffalo acquires Wayne Simmons from the Devils for a conditional fifth. It seems like all these picks are conditional. Uh, if Buffalo makes the playoffs and Simmons plays 10 games, it turns into a fourth. Again, all these conditions for just minor differences in picks. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Didn't expect Buffalo to get for sure, even though they're not technically they're not in the wild card race, but they can still kind of get third place in the division, especially with the Leafs struggling. Simmons is most likely walking the UFA. So I don't know. I don't get the logic behind this trade for Buffalo. Yeah, this one shocked me. Not because the player was traded, just the destination in itself. So weird trade. Surprised that they only got a 4th-round pick, especially since the Devils retained half of Simmons' cap hit. So just a weird trade in general. I'm still confused by it.
Yeah, I mean, if you are the Sabres, I just don't get it. I mean, I don't think they have any chance of making the playoffs. And that said, they're close. I mean, points, if you just look at the standings, you could be like, well, I could see it happening. They're 8 points back of Toronto with 2 games in hand. So if they win those 2 games in hand, then they are 4 points back, and they can make up 4 points. But I just don't think the team is good enough. You know, I just don't really get what are you gaining from this? So I mean the fact that they're got retained salary. I mean it's not like they gave up much, so it's not terrible. It's just surprising that they are buying at the deadline. And if you're New Jersey, I mean I wasn't surprised they're trading him. I was just a little surprised again that they traded him to Buffalo. But I think that's not a terrible return for him. And his his 8 points. He's got 8 points. I mean, sorry, no, 8 goals, 16 assists for 24 points. That would put him eighth on the team in score, or sorry, 7th on the team in scoring, ahead of Jeff Skinner. And I think that could end up being one of the worst contracts signed by this team unless Skinner turns things around. All right. Next trade, there's been a bunch of minor trades we're not going to talk about. We're next going to do 2 trades the Oilers were involved in. Sam Gagner and 2 seconds to the Red Wings in exchange for Andreas Athanasiou and Ryan Kuffner. So Shaedon, you're the Oilers fan. What's your thoughts on this trade?
I love it. I did expect them to get Athanasiou. And, just one thing, I feel bad for Sam Gagner. For the first, he's been, when we drafted him in 07, and we traded him in 2014, just all the crappiness, just how bad we sucked through the time, and and he stayed here for a long time, and he witnessed all that, decade of darkness stuff. He witnessed the losing, never complained, and when we traded him back last year, he was happy. His family loves it here, and a lot of families just want to see Gagner play in the playoffs with the Oilers, and we're just about a month away from it, and now he gets traded to one of the worst teams in NHL history, and I feel bad for him. But with that being said, adding Athanasiou is huge because there's your top 6 winger for Connor McDavid right there. Athanasiou has lethal speed. His skill set is unbelievable. Now people are gonna look at the minus and say, "Holy crap, this kid sucks defensively," and most of that's due to just how bad the Red Wings are. And watching last night, he's decent defensively, but he's not great or anything. But with that being said, I love it by Edmonton. He looked like a perfect fit on McDavid's wing, and albeit it's just one game, but two of the fastest players in the NHL playing together. That's a recipe for success. And Detroit was obviously looking for a first round pick, didn't get that, and Edmonton gave up 2 seconds. Now, if they make the playoffs, that's kind of closer to the early third round. So that's not a lot to give up. So, great trade by Edmonton. Kuffner's probably just there for the roster spot, probably going to the AHL, but love this trade by Edmonton.
Yep, Kuffner has never recorded an NHL point and has only played 10 NHL games, so probably never gonna make the roster. Here's my thoughts on Athanasiou. He's been injured this year. I believe he's only played 46 games. In those 46 games, he has 24 points, 10 of them goals. So, I mean, again, that's not a ton of games, but that said, a little. I don't think they had any chance of getting a first for him with stats like that. His career high in points is 54. So it's not like but he did score 30 goals that year. So it's not like he's a complete all-star, but I think the Oilers gave up. I don't think they gave up like way too much, but I think it's a small bit of an overpay to have 2 seconds because I think it's not like it's 2 seconds and then they're also trading Kuffner. I mean, Kuffner is basically worthless. Probably will never play in the NHL. So I don't know. Again, if you're the Oilers, nothing wrong with buying, especially with the division wide open. But I think the Red Wings they can't be upset about the return they got either.
Well, just one more thing to ask is he was also in RFA, so we still have control.
Yes, that's very important.
Yeah. And just, one more thing about Athanasiou. I know it's one game, but he got 2 points, so I'm excited to see what he does tonight.
Yep. We'll talk about that right after this. We're talking about Tyler Ennis, the other trade the Oilers made. I don't think this one is that complicated. I think the Oilers got an absolute steal, only giving up a fifth for Tyler Ennis, who's got 33 points. I mean, I just think that's a complete steal. I don't know how the Senators justify that that trade.
Like, he's getting paid $800K. He has, like you said, he had 33 points on the bad sense. And, just one more thing, he's another speedy, skilled forward, which Edmonton's inserted into their top 9. And fun fact, he also got 2 points the other night. He's already 4th on the Oilers for scoring. He's 15 points behind Nugent Hopkins, so Edmonton just adding depth pieces, which is good for them. They want to contend, not for the cup, but want to make it go far into the playoffs. And I'm surprised we gave up a fifth for the guy, and he's an Edmonton boy, so obviously he's gonna love playing it here. So, great trade by Edmonton. And I'm surprised that we gave up that little for a guy like him.
I mean, the fact that they got a third for DeMello, and DeMello's a defenseman, and the Jets needed a defenseman, so it's not his job to blow up points. But the fact that they got a third for him and only a fifth for Ennis, I think the Oilers just absolutely robbed them blind here. Now, it's not like he's a huge, great player, but still, I think it's a very good deal for the Oilers. All right, we'll move on. We're not going to talk about the Connor Sheary, Dominic Cahoon trade. Because we don't. If we talked about that, we'd have to talk about a lot of these other minor trades. I believe this trade, if you include the three-way trade as 2 trades, which a lot of people are doing, because technically that is how it works. This broke the NHL record for most trades on deadline day, but most of these were really small trades. So most of them were not worth much. we're now going to talk about this trade involving the Sharks. This is a big one. The Sharks trade Barclay Goodrow and a third, which was Philadelphia's, which we got from the Braun trade, to Tampa for Anthony Greco and a first-round pick. I'll let you start this off, but what are your thoughts on this deal?
I'm so dumbfounded. Like, a first for Barclay Goodrow. Like, I don't get it. Like, once again, I know Tampa's a great team and they want to contend, but you're really giving up a first for a good fourth line player? Like, I don't see the logic behind that. You know, Greco's an AHL piece. He's whatever. And I know the Sharks have given up a third round pick from Philly, but a first for the Sharks stalled this trade. Like, without hesitation, I think that speaks for itself. A first for Goudreau, the Sharks won.
All right, I pretty much agree. I'm going to temporarily defend Tampa here. Goodrow's not a fourth liner. This season, he's actually played on the Sharks' first line for a lot of the season, but that's mostly due to injuries at center the Sharks have had. And he's on Tampa. I would say he's a third or fourth liner, but I think he could be a second liner on some teams and is a third liner. And the one thing he does bring, he can kill penalties. He's a good defensive forward, which Tampa likes. He's a big player, like physically large. I think there are some benefits. That said, a first round pick, really. I mean, as a Sharks fan, I love this trade. You know, as sad as it is to see him go, because he holds a special place in my heart and in the hearts of all Sharks fans for that goal against Vegas in overtime, Game 7. I mean, that is probably the most iconic moment in Sharks history, and that's even more than that Donskoy goal in Game 3 of the Cup final, just because this was a Game 7, capping a great comeback. So Sharks fans love him for that, but the fact that we got a first for him, I'm thrilled about. And I basically view the third as just we traded a third for Greco pretty much. Greco, most people know him because he beat McDavid's record in the AHL skills competition. His fastest skating time was faster than McDavid's, so that's something, but he only has 20 points in 40 AHL games. I believe Cap Friendly is wrong because it lists those points as on the Barracuda, but he has yet to play for the Barracuda yet. Yeah, I don't know why it says he has those points with them, but he's not. He probably will never. Well, I would say he probably will never make the NHL, but with the Sharks so injured, he actually has a pretty good chance of playing for them this year. With all the injuries they've had, I would not be surprised if we see him play a few games down the stretch, but he's not very important. It's pretty much we trade Goodrow to Lightning, and the Lightning, again, like we said earlier, they overpaid for Coleman, we think, and we think they overpaid for Goodrow, but they did get better, and that's something.
Yeah.
All right, I would never talk about this trade if this wasn't the Sharks Source podcast, but would just very quickly say the Sharks got Brandon Davidson for future considerations. Now, considerations, I believe, played the year with the Sharks. He's a stud forward. We're very sad to see him go. But it seems like future considerations has played on every team in the league. So I don't know. He gets traded a lot, it seems. No, for real though, Brandon Davidson's played with Stockton this season. I would say this is a depth for the Flames AHL team. This is like a depth move. Again, probably will never play in the NHL, but with the Sharks so injured, I guess it's good to have some players on the Barracuda since the whole team has pretty much been called up.
I would just say one thing about Davidson. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. He actually played a lot of his time with the Oilers, and the guy's underrated. He's not gonna be. He's just been so injured in his career. His rookie season, the 2015-16 season, he was a solid defensive presence. If he can somehow get back to that form, I think he'd be a decent option for the Sharks. But just one thing on Brendan Davidson, I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, well, I will be, as my personal team's hockey season's over, I will get to see the Barracuda play a lot more. So I will probably get to watch him play for them in person. So that is exciting. All right. Now we're going to talk about one of the later trades in the day, but more major. Sami Vatanen to the Hurricanes for Fredrik Claesson, Yanni Kukkanen. I hope I'm saying that right. A conditional fourth. The fourth becomes a third if he plays. It becomes a fourth if he plays 5 regular season games. It becomes a third if he plays in 12, or if Carolina makes the playoffs and he plays in 70% of their playoff games. So, what are your thoughts? So, basically, a third or a fourth. What are your thoughts on this trade?
I just remember before the deadline, New Jersey wanted a second round pick in our prospect, and you know what? Vatanen is a very good defenseman, and I know right now he is injured, but this is another steal for the Carolina Hurricanes. With Brett Pesce out and Dougie Helms now, by the way, they needed another right-hand defenseman, and they added it for dirt cheap. Claesson is an AHL piece. Our fourth-round pick turned into third is nothing, and Kukkonen, I don't know who he is. This is a slam. Once again, another great trade by the Carolina Hurricanes. And with New Jersey retaining 50%, yes, he's a UFA, but I don't care. They got back nothing really. So, great trade by Carolina.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is one of the best trades of the season. Uh, you know, Fredrik Claesson, I mean, he actually did play with the Devils last night. It's saying on Cap Friendly. So that's something. But so I guess I can't say he'll never make the NHL. But really, he's not. I mean, he's not a significant player. Kukkinen's young, so maybe there's a chance he turns into something. Former high second round pick, but no, this is a steal for the Hurricanes to get Sami Vatanen. He is a rental, but that said, to not have to give up a second, which I thought that was like the starting point for any team. You have to give up a second if you want Vatanen. So I think another great trade for the Hurricanes, and they are right in the hunt of that playoff race, but they are adding. All right, finally, we have 2 more trades. Here is probably one of the most significant of the day, and one that confused me a little bit. It's a 3-way trade. To the Blackhawks, they receive Malcolm Subban, Slava Denim, and a 2020 second-round pick. The Leafs receive Vegas's 5th-round pick from 2020, and in exchange, the Leafs acquire Robin Lehner and immediately trade him, retaining 50% of his salary. And so Vegas is and Toronto also retained 50%. Chicago also retained 50% of the salary. So Vegas is barely paying anything for Lehner, and they get Lehner and Martins Dzierkals. So what are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, Malcolm Subban has had a rough few years with the Golden Knights. Obviously, Chicago wanted a younger goalie back. Don't know who any of the prospects are. They gave up Pittsburgh's second-round pick, but great move by Vegas. Fleury's been not having a great season by his standards. So, Lehner's having actually a decent season if you go off save percentage, because for me, goals against average is more of a team stat.
Agreed.
So, if your goal has a .920
that's good. That's very good.
Yeah. So, obviously they felt like Fleury needed some competition. If Lehner can get hot, you know what? He's your starter and he can get a good paid in free agency. So, I guess the Leafs were there just to help Vegas with the money issue a bit more. But, just a great move by Vegas. Chicago gets a couple good assets. So, pretty good trade. But, I think Lehner's going to go off in Vegas, honestly. I think he's going to play extremely well. And this could, like I said, lead to a good payday for him.
You know what? If you're Vegas, you got some thinking to do, because Fleury only has a .906 save percentage this year, which by his standards is not good. Now Vegas does not have a lot of cap space, but that said, if they did, they would really I think they would love to sign Lehner. Lehner is much younger than Fleury. I mean, he could be their goalie of the future if they could afford him. I don't think they can. But at least this season anyway, I don't see why, if he plays better than Fleury, he could be their starter in the playoffs. Why not? I mean, you play the player who's playing better, and he is the better player, I think, at least right now. So even if they do start Fleury in the playoffs, even if Fleury returns to normal, unlike Subban, Leonard's a reliable backup that if Fleury gets injured or if they have games where they want to rest him, they can put in Leonard and they'll be perfectly fine. Now, if you're Chicago, I think you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm speaking a little harshly, but I think they should be ashamed. The demand for goalies, especially with Carolina needing a goalie, especially, I mean, it couldn't be higher, really. With Carolina needing a goalie, I mean, Vegas needed a goalie, that's why they got him. But there are teams that could use Leonard. To only get a second and Denham, I mean, this guy has 9 points in 30 games in college. The prospect probably not going anywhere. He's only 19, so there's still some time. But, I mean, he's not a great player. Uh, you know, so I just think that it's the main piece they got was Subban and a second, and Subban is terrible. I mean, to to be honest, his highest NHL save percentage he's had is 910, and that was 2 years ago. This year he's got an 8.9. I mean, honestly, I just don't even think that he's barely even NHL level. I thought Oscar Dansk, who's the AHL goalie for Vegas, was a better goalie. So I really think the Hawks were a huge loser in this trade. And then I think Vegas got a great goalie, and I think they're a big winner.
Just one thing on Demon, these college prospects, just you never know where you can get out of them. Just one example, John Marino had I think 8 points last year for Harvard as a third pairing right shot defensive guy. Everton trades him to Pittsburgh, and he has 28 points. So I'm gonna guess Chicago's trying to find a diamond in the rough here, but like you said, just a terrible trade by Chicago, and especially with, like you said, Carolina needed the goalie, they could have got way more.
And you know what? If you're like you said, it's hard to read college prospects, and with any prospect, it's sort of luck a little bit. But if you look at his stats, he didn't play. He played in the BCHL and USHL, or I don't even know. He barely even played in the USHL. He played in the British Columbia Hockey League and then college. But he's never had more than the most amount of points he ever had was 14, and that was last year in college. So he's still very young, but I just don't think it's worth giving up Leonard for that. I just think the Hawks lose this trade big time. All right, we got one more trade, and then we're gonna do some winners and losers. So the Hurricanes make another move. They go out and get Brady Shea for a conditional first-round pick. The Rangers will receive the later of either the Hurricanes or the Leafs pick. So whichever pick is worse, the Hurricanes or the Leafs first-round pick, because the Hurricanes have both, is what the Rangers will receive. So, Shaedon, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Another unexpected trade and another huge trade for the Carolina Hurricanes. You know what? Hamilton's supposed to come back in late March. If Hamilton comes back, your decor, I'm not going to say your topper, but your entire decor is probably the best in the NHL, just the amount of depth they have. And Brady Shea is a good young defenseman. I'm surprised, honestly, the Rangers gave him up and to a division rival while they're in the hunt for a playoff spot. And the Rangers are right there. Like, they're not out of it. So, you know what? Carolina, trade the first. It's not that too far-fetched off for a young guy like Brady Shea. Good trade by Carolina. Don't know why the Rangers traded him, especially in the playoff hunt. Carolina had a great day, honestly. And, I think they win this trade.
Yeah, Shea's not exactly an extreme offensive defenseman. He's got 23 points in 60 games. So I mean, it's not terrible, but he is locked up. He's signed till 23-24 through then, 2024 at $5.25 million her. And again, if you're the Hurricanes got a lot better. I mean, just looking at roster alone, they got better. The Rangers, it confuses me, and we'll talk about them signing Kreider. But it's like, are you rebuilding or aren't you? Because signing Kreider makes it seem like you're not, but then this trade makes it seem like you are. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I sort of agree with you. Like, what are you doing? So I guess it does. It doesn't seem like they're too concerned about whether or not they make the playoffs, which is fair enough. But then the Kreider contract, which we'll get to. But again, if you're a Hurricanes fan, I think you got to be happy about this trade. Even if because you'll still have a first round pick this year, and you'll have the better first round pick out of the two you could have. So you can't be too upset. All right. Let's. I guess we should do some contract. We can do the contracts after. Let's do some winners and losers. So, who are some winners teams you have this deadline? Who are some losers?
Well, one of the winners, it's basically always right now, is the Carolina Hurricanes. Adding Bassman for dirt cheap. Adding a great center and Vincent Trocheck once again for cheap. And adding a guy like Brady Shea. That's the Carolina Hurricanes get an A in my books.
And who's a loser?
The Toronto Maple Leafs. Tyson Barrie was rumored on a move. They haven't shipped him off. He's probably gonna go to free agency. For all the injuries they had right now, they haven't made one single trade. And I thought after losing to an emergency 42-year-old backup goalie, Zamboni driver, who works for their minor league team, I thought that get Dubas to do something. But the only thing they did was trade Michael Hutchinson for Howie Rosen. So I don't get it by the Leafs, and they can fall out of a playoff spot anytime soon. I thought they should have done something at least. And I hate the Leafs, so I don't really care. But it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. Here's how I view it. I guess I'll before I get into mine, the Leafs. I don't know if they lost. The reason is because I don't think they're a special team right now. So I don't know if they should be buying. Even if they're not necessarily buying, because if they're trading Barrie, who's a rental right now, for someone else who's good right now, I don't think they're cup contenders this year. I never really have. So I definitely don't think it would have been a good idea for them to give up part of their future. They already don't have a first. So I don't know if it would have been the best idea for the Leafs to go out and buy. So we'll see. My winners, obviously, I agree with you on the Hurricanes, but I'll try and pick someone else just because you already picked them. I gotta go with the Oilers. I think they're winners this deadline. They got better, but more importantly, I think the Flames didn't really get that much better. They got Gustafsson, but I don't think the rest of the division got too much better. I think the Oilers got good enough so that they have I think it's very likely they make the playoffs. I would be very surprised if they didn't make the playoffs. My other winner is Ottawa. I think they got just a big haul of picks, which is what they need. I think Pierre Dorian, who used to be considered one of the worst GMs in the league, is now considered, I would say, one of the best. And to me, I already talked about it a lot. I think the biggest loser is Chicago. They gave up Leonard and got very little back, so I think they're the biggest loser. I think the second biggest loser is the Panthers. I think that Trocheck trade was just a disaster, and I thought they were going to buy a defenseman like Dylan, and they did not.
Once again, I agree with you with Chicago, Edmonton. I have one more winner though, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. Adding a guy like Jason Zucker, which was like 2.5 weeks ago. He's been great with Crosby. Just adding a guy like Marlowe. And bringing back Connor Sheary, by the way. The Penguins have their eyes set on the Cup, so just another winner in my books.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, I think we'll talk about some signings. There were two big signings on the deadline day. We already talked about the Pajot one. So Chris Kreider, confusingly extended by the Rangers, everyone thought, oh, he's the biggest trade target, and instead they decide to extend him. The contract is 7 years, 6.5 million per. What are your thoughts on the trade?
7 years.
I
I
mean
have
the
no problem
contract.
with 6.5 cap hit, but the 7 years is really risky, especially with a guy like Kreider, who I believe is in his
He's 28.
late 20s.
28.
He's been having a great offensive campaign, but you have to be careful in these contract years. Once again, no problem with the cap hit. Would have been better if it was 4 or 5 years, but obviously they love this player a lot, so a bit too many years. But once again, it's confusing that they also traded Shea, so I don't know what the Rangers are thinking right now. But once again, decent cap, but just too much term.
Yeah, you know what? I think it was a bad contract. Not the contract itself. Like, I agree with you. Cap hit is fine, I guess. The term is too long, but I don't think his value could have been much higher. I heard like a lot of teams didn't like um what the Rangers were demanding. They thought the Rangers were demanding too much for him. But I still think they should have moved him. They could have definitely gotten a first and something. Like, I don't think that's controversial. They could. I mean, I think based on what Tampa gave up for Goodrow, they could have probably got a first and a second, and then maybe a prospect. Because also look at Paja. So I don't know. I think his value couldn't be higher. I don't think he'll get too much better right now. I mean, he's 28, so I don't think he can improve that much. And eventually, he'll start regressing with plenty of time left on the contract. So I don't know, but and especially when the Rangers then go and turn around and trade Shea, it's like, okay, so are you trying to make the playoffs this year or not? Because if you're not, you should have traded Kreider, and if you are, you shouldn't have traded Shea. So that's my thoughts on that contract. The next contract that was signed, Jake Muzzin, the Leafs signed him. It's a 4-year extension at $5.625 million. What are your thoughts on that deal?
It's a decent deal, honestly. Top four defenseman. He's gritty. He's physical. He can put up offensive capable numbers. Good deal for at least 4 years is perfect. Just there's gonna be a lot of moves. I feel like this offseason is gonna be a pretty big one just because of the expansion draft after the 2021 season. So I think teams are already planning ahead. So this is just some speculation. Maybe the Leafs, and just say there's no protection in this Muzzin deal either. So do the Leafs maybe have a plan to expose him in the expansion draft when it does happen? So value contract for the guy, but when these signings do get released, I think we should look a bit more into him just because of the expansion draft.
Yeah, man. All right, you know what about my thoughts on the contract? Again, I agree with you. I think it's a pretty good contract. And but now he's injured, right? I believe he got injured just last night, so his first game after signing the contract. So that's really sucks for the Leafs and throws their plans off this year. But yeah, they need defense. They didn't go out and get one at the deadline, but they signed Jake Muzzin, who was going to be a UFA. So I think it's pretty good for them. All right, so that is it for the trades and contracts that we have been talking about. So we're going to take a look at the standings. And what else did you want to talk about this year? I mean, this podcast.
Hold on, I'm just searching.
From
what was it again?
So you're talking about, well, when we talk about the standings, you said you talk about why you think the Oilers are dark horses for the Cup. And we can talk a little about injuries. But we don't need to talk too much about it. And we were going to talk about David Ayres and the emergency backup. But then again, there's not really much for us to say about it. I mean, it's been so over talked about. I mean, it's even gone like outside of hockey. I mean, they went on like the Today Show and stuff. So I don't think we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about standings. So I'm gonna do a very, very brief, and I mean brief, overview of the standings. Then we can talk about the Oilers. You think they're dark horses for the Cup, and we'll talk about a bit of injuries, and then we'll wrap up. So here we go. Let's try and catch up because this is going to go fast. We got in the Metropolitan, Washington leading with 84 points, followed by Pittsburgh with 80, Philly with 79. In the Atlantic, we got Boston leading the conference with 90 points, followed by Tampa with 85 and Toronto with 74. First wild card, Islanders 77, Columbus 76. Then we got Carolina 74, New York 72, Florida 72, Habs 67, Sabres 66. That's the East teams in the hunt. In the West Central Division, St. Louis leads the division with 84 points. Dallas got 80, Colorado 79. In the Pacific, Vegas with 76, Vancouver with 74, Edmonton tied with also 74. Then in the wild card, we got Calgary, first wild card 72, Nashville with 70. They're finally back in a playoff spot. Then we got Winnipeg, Arizona, both with 70. Then Minnesota, my favorite, one of the teams that I've really enjoyed watching and sort of rooted for. They've got 67 games. 67 points, but only 62 games played. So that's they got some games in hand over Calgary and some of these other teams. So, Shaedon, what are your any thoughts on the division in general before we get into Edmonton? I mean, on the whole standings in general.
I actually have a few.
Yeah, all right, let's hear.
So let's go to the East for a sec.
Alright.
You know, it's gonna be an interesting race for sure. You know, the Leafs are like I said a million times, the Leafs aren't a for sure thing yet. And you know what? It's a nice story how where Columbus is in the position where they're in right now, especially with all the talent they lost of the off season. But Carolina is 2 points behind them, but 3 games in hand. So, you know, it was the million injuries that Columbus has had. You know, it looks like it's going to come to an end, but hey, they're still in the race, so anything can happen. And once again, the Rangers are right there. Once again, I don't understand why they would trade Shea to a team they're right next to. You know, Florida is right there, but if Bobrovsky just plays well, they can be in a higher position. Montreal's probably out. Buffalo, like you said, 2 games in hand on the Leafs, 8 points back, so they're not out, but it for sure looks like it. Now let's go to the West. You know, for me, it looks like Arizona won't make it. Yes, they're tied with Nashville. They played 4 more games. That's critical. And same with the Jets, they played 3 more games in Nashville, and they're tied with them at points. In Minnesota, who's played the same amount of games as Nashville, is only 3 points behind them, and he has so many games in hand on all these teams. So obviously, it's not over until it's over. But from my point of view, I think Winnipeg and Arizona are screwed. And you know, you could say if Kemper wasn't injured, would Arizona be in a better position? Or if Winnipeg had a decent defense core, would they be in a better position? Yeah, they would, but you can't use butts in the NHL. So, you know, the West is still very tight. Literally, Edmonton could be first in the Pacific today, or they could drop down to the wildcard spot today. Literally, it's so close right now. It's going to be fun to watch, but honestly, for sure, from my point of view, it looks like the Coyotes aren't making it.
Yeah, I don't know. The Western Conference, I mentioned a little before, but Minnesota, just want to say it again. They're 5 points back of Calgary, but they've got 2 games in hand, and that's for the first wild card spot. They're same number of games in. They have no games in hand over Nashville, but only 3 points back. Minnesota is definitely in it. Just want to mention that. And then you want to talk about Edmonton. You think they're a dark horse cup contender. I'd like to hear that because I disagree, but let's hear it. Why do you think they're a cup contender?
Like, I'm not saying that they're going to win a cup. Honestly, I don't even see them making it past the first round. I have what I mean by a dark horse cup. I think they if they really try, they can kind of go on a little run. And here's why. Obviously, this is tying into the injury thing. You know, this whole month of Edmonton has been just crazy to say the least. We lost Connor for 6 games. We've lost James Neal for an entire month so far. He hasn't played since the end of January. We lost Zach Cassidy because he's retarded for kicking someone in the chest.
Whoa.
Um, you know, losing Russell Hurst, he's a veteran on the back end. Klefbom's our best defenseman, and he's supposed to be out for another week or two. And, Yamamoto literally just got injured a couple days ago. So, just how well Edmonton was playing without these key components of their roster just amazed me. And now, they're slowly starting to get healthy. Connor McDavid has 6 points in 2 games since returning, which is unbelievable. And Leon Draisaitl is finally clearing his own line. And I said it from the start. You need to split up Connor and Leon because yes, they're dynamic when they're together, but defensively, it's gonna hurt you and come to bite you back in the butt. And you know what? Leon's been impressed me on his own line. If you want to win a playoff series, they need to be split up. Malkin, one of the main reasons why the Penguins have won their cup is because if Crosby wasn't doing anything on his own line, Malkin was carrying the load. And you need those two. If you need one of those guys to contribute, the other isn't. And you know what? Just with the goaltending has been solid all season, and I just have a really good grasp on the team. And if they start to get healthy, they could go on a bit of a run. Now, once again, I think we're out in the first round because I think teams like Vegas or Vancouver or who drop down to a a team like St. Louis or whoever can easily smoke us. But, it's nice to see the group go through adversity and respond well to it. So, if they get healthy by playoff time, I think they can go on a good run. But, at best, I can probably see them going to the second round to maybe Game 7 again. But, obviously this is just a transitional year. And, I'm just enjoying every one bit of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The Oilers, I think they have a high ceiling. I don't think they will make it to the Cup, but this has to be a really exciting time to be an Oilers fan. I mean, it really is only going to go up from here, I think. I like their new additions at the deadline. McDavid is healthy now, and I think Draisaitl, because he's been healthy the whole season, this will probably finally be the year he wins the Hart, because I don't think he's going to win the Hart very often with McDavid on his team. But because he has played pretty much the full season, McDavid hasn't. I think he has a good chance. Anyway, though, I agree with you. I think the Oilers, I don't know if they'll win the Cup, but they definitely have played well, faced with injuries and adversity. All right, I think we won't really talk too much about the injuries because I don't think there's too much to say, and also this podcast is getting really long. We're almost at 125 minutes. So, an hour and 25 minutes. So, unless you have anything to add, we'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts?
Just a small tidbit on just kind of one thing to watch over the off season. There's a trade that almost got done at the deadline, Breathe to the Islanders. So, just one thing to maybe keep an eye on for the next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that. I saw that, but it never happened. I wonder how close that was, or even if it was happening, because it never did end up happening. So maybe it wasn't even. I don't know. Maybe it was just a faulty source. We're not sure, but yeah, definitely something to watch. And I think it depends on whether or not the Wild make the playoffs based on what happens to Parise. If they don't make the playoffs, I could totally see him getting moved. All right, that will do it for this episode. This has been a very long episode compared to what we've done recently, but I think we covered a lot, and it's a good show. I hope you guys enjoyed the deadline. We'll probably do our next show. We'd like to do it at some point in March. I'm thinking early to mid March will be around our next show. So again, hope you guys enjoy the playoff push. It's a very exciting time to be a hockey fan, not so much a Sharks fan, unfortunately. But I guess take whatever go watch the other teams. That's what I'm doing. Again, so I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.